So welcome everyone, and just another little update video. So it's January 1st 2021, and over the last week or so got a little bit of snow here in the UK. It's only ever a little bit of snow in the UK usually. We have had times where we've had a decent amount of snowfall, but not very often. Well, what you find is that because we don't get snow very often, people find it a real struggle and a trial to drive in it. So what makes for good driving in snow? Bear in mind, in this country, because we don't get much snow, people don't generally change their tyres to snow tyres. So they're driving on summer compounds basically, and all season at best. And that starts you at a very big disadvantage to start with. So the tenets of good driving in snow are basically everything has to be calmed down. So steering inputs, accelerator inputs, brake inputs, just very, very, very calm and very smooth. Because if you're not calm and you're not smooth, you will upset the balance of the car very quickly, and you'll lose grip very quickly. So the worst day of the snow we had, I took a car, picked one up that was a little two-wheel drive, small sort of city hatch, and it was on just regular tyres, nothing special. Managed to make good progress in it, and where people really fall down in snow is that when it comes to climbing uphill, they start off too slowly. So a little bit like you would with off-road driving, the premise is as fast as necessary, as slow as possible. So yeah, if you're going to go uphill, then you need to start off with enough momentum to get you up the hill. That doesn't mean to say you go mad, it just means you get up into sort of like third gear, and when you sense wheel spin, you back off slightly so you get the grip again, and then just feed the throttle in very gently so you don't break grip, and you keep the momentum going, and just control the wheel spin. Once you start wheel spinning, you'll lose momentum very quickly. So I managed to do that, and got a fair way towards getting to work. But what became very obvious very quickly was, as the traffic built up in the morning, the road surface was getting very polished, and I got to one point where I was going to go downhill to rise back uphill, and it was already queued to the top of the hill as I approached. So I thought, if I go down this hill and everything else is polishing up the road in a two-wheel drive car, I'm not going to make it, because you're going to have to stop because all the other traffic is stopped and you can't keep that momentum going. So the secret, stop on the flat, assess what's going on ahead of you. In that instance, the best policy was to turn around, which is what I did. So I did that, and I got the vehicle back to, actually I took it back to my home. It wasn't my car, but I took it back home, picked up a 4x4 and used that. And again, with that, there were times where I just pulled up, helped somebody out, give them a push. 2 or 3 of you giving a car a push, you'll get it out of trouble. And then carried on, made progress, and got to work. So the reason for giving up with the two-wheel drive car was not that you couldn't get it through the conditions, it was the impact other drivers were having on it. And that happens with a 4x4 even. I remember many years ago in a Range Rover, coming from Buxton, particularly bad snowfall, came in very quickly, very unexpected, the roads weren't treated, and everything stopped. At one point I was heading towards queuing traffic on the other side, and there must have been a mile of trucks that were just stationary, and the first few had gone to bed, they'd closed the curtains, gone to bed. So everything behind them was stuck and didn't know why they were stuck. We ended up on that particular journey just using the road that was available, whether it be the right side of the road or the wrong side of the road to get through. And just take it nice and steady. With a 4x4, you've generally got more grip on the getting away, sort of pulling away from stationary. You've got twice as much wheels trying to propel you forward as the average motorist. But what you have to remember is you've only got the same amount of wheels trying to stop you, so you've always only got the same braking as everybody else. The difference being off-roaders tend to have fairly decent tyres on them, so you get a little bit more of an advantage because of the tyre setup. But that is your only advantage when it comes to braking, cornering, etc. So I'd say basic tenets of not off-road driving, but driving in snow, which is similar. Slow as it's possible to go, but you have to go as fast as it's necessary to get through the obstacle, which in this instance is snow. And every input you put into the vehicle, whether it be steering or whether it be brakes or accelerator, just make them nice and gentle. That way you won't break grip. So if you hammer on the brakes quickly, you'll break grip because the tyres haven't got the surface to grip on, and if you throw the steering in, then you will break grip. Either the front end will go away from you, or it'll send the back end round. And really, you know, if you're driving in snow, you just need to be going very, very gently. The other thing to remember is at slow speed, your ABS generally doesn't work below 5 miles an hour. So at very slow speeds, I see people doing this a lot. They lock up the brakes and then they're just sliding. So no control over the car whatsoever. They are in a slide. And at that point, you should be just fevering the brake pedal and coming back off the brake pedal a bit, and then just finding where the grip is, so that you don't go around in a circle. I saw a lady when we were out last week. She came into a roundabout backwards purely because she was coming downhill, got to a low speed where the ABS started working, and then the car just came right round on her because she locked it up. And with a slight camber on the road and downhill as well, the back end just came round and she was heading backwards onto the island. She didn't fortunately hit anything, but she completely lost control. Now, at the point where you feel the car stop working with the ABS, so the ABS cuts out at 5 miles an hour and lower, it's a case of then you have to take that control. So rather than just keeping the vehicle locked up and sliding, just feather the brake pedal. Just we call it cadence braking, and it's off and on the brake pedal basically. But trying to find the level where the grip is rather than coming off fully, bang on fully. Just try and find the grip and just feather the brake pedal. And that way you won't end up coming into roundabouts backwards or losing control even on a fairly flat, straight piece of road where there's a camber on the road. Because if there's a camber on the road, even if it's dead straight, if you lock up at low speed, the back end will come round or the whole car will slide sideways into the curb. And the amount of time you see people who are braking and they just slide into the curb, and goodness knows what they're doing to their alloy wheels and their tracking. It's because they're not working with the car and working with the grip levels. They just hammer on the brakes and hope for the best and the thing stops. If you feather the brake pedal, you will find you can maintain steering. The rear wheels maintain grip, so they don't come round on you. And it is just a skill to take that brave step and come slightly off the brake pedal. It goes against all intuitive instinct, but if you do it, you'll realise you've suddenly got grip again and you can stop the car safely rather than just wherever the car ends up because you've locked up sliding and no control whatsoever. So that's a few principles in it. There are other things that you can do. Some of the Audis years ago, they used to have switchable ABS. So in snow and ice you could turn it off because it was actually better without, if you got a skillful driver. The other thing that you can try doing is pulling away. If you've got a manual car, pull away in second gear. All that's doing really is lowering the torque that actually gets to the wheels, so you're less likely to break grip. Obviously the higher you go up the gearbox, the reduction in the torque available to your wheels is reduced, so, and that way you help not break grip from the amount of grip that you've got on the snow. There are times where you get a slightly polished surface and no matter what you do, you're not going to get grip. And sometimes traction control and those types of aids works against you. So if you've got switchable traction control, turn it off. If you're on a really polished icy surface, turn it off, and you can sort of just induce quite a lot of wheel spin, and that way get through the surface and get down to some decent traction. Doesn't always work, depends how polished it is, but I would say the biggest piece of advice I can give is, if you're worried that the vehicles in front of you are going to stop on a hill, you stop on the flat. So you hang back where it's flat, and that way you'll get going again because you're on the flat. If you try pulling away on a hill, you've got very little chance of starting to move a ton or a ton and a half, or in a bigger vehicle maybe 2+ tons, trying to get that to move uphill from a standing start in a very slippery conditions is nigh on impossible. So you sort of stop on the flat, and that way you need far less adhesion to the road to be able to get the mass of the vehicle moving, and it makes a world of difference. So it's all about reading the road ahead. Again, when it comes to braking gently, if you're right up the back of the car in front and he stops, you haven't got much choice about braking gently. So you keep your distance, a lot bigger distances. It's going to take you 4 times the amount of distance to stop in snow as it is in maybe even wet conditions. So keep a massive distance between you and the car in front. If he does something silly, spins round or whatever, you've got time to stop. You won't go ploughing into him. So it's all about the planning. It's all about thinking ahead, using the amount of distance you can see up the road, use that to the full. And that should be a matter of course in just normal driving, but you get the impression for a lot of drivers they don't look much further than the car in front, and they tend to be right up their bumper. Well, if you're driving like that, you're going to crash. At some point you will crash. You should be looking as far up the road as you can, seeing what's going on, assessing everything you can see in that distance, and making a judgment as to whether that pedestrian is going to come off the path, whether that car's going to decide he wants to turn right and he's going to have to stop. It's all those types of looking ahead and trying to drive defensively, as it's called. So you've already planned every reaction or every eventuality, and you've planned for it. If you drive like that in snow, you'll certainly be avoiding the situations where you get yourself into a panic situation because you really haven't got the time to stop, or you haven't got the distance to think, how am I going to get around this? Because sometimes stopping is not always the best option. Sometimes it's seeing what's going on and steering around the problem, and come off the throttle but don't brake. That's the other thing that a lot of drivers do. Their first instinct to anything that happens on the road, you'll see them touch the brakes. And if you're following a car, you'll see, a car comes away, touch the brakes. The pedestrians on the path, touch the brakes. And their first instinct to, a parked car on the side of the road, touch the they might not actually do a great deal in the way of braking, but they touch the brakes and the brake lights come on. That is their first instinct. Your first instinct should be, what's going on? How can I work it out? And you should be able to do that in a split second. It shouldn't impact the amount of braking distance you've got, should it need to be braked for. Should you need to apply the brakes, it shouldn't be. It should be an instinct as to I don't need to touch the brakes. I can steer around this, not a problem. And that's the way you want to be driving, really. The problem with modern driving schools and modern thoughts on driving is that you use the gears to accelerate and get up to speed, and you use the brakes to slow down. The old-fashioned way of using gears and brake and engine braking to slow down actually works a lot better in snow. A lot better. So if you are using the gears to change down, what happens is the wheel may not turn fast enough for the road speed that you've got because it's so slippery. But because the wheel still turns to some degree, then you maintain steering. But if you brake, you will just lock that wheel up. Once you lock the wheel up, you've got no control. It's going to go where it wants to go, and you have absolutely no say over that. And so, braking down the gears and just using the gearbox to slow you down is actually a lot better. And if you can just stay in the same gear you're in and just ease off the throttle, and that brakes you enough, that again is a massive advantage when you're driving in snow. Now we're just going to give this a little bit of wheelie. So everything should be a gentle movement, and you should obviously drive to the conditions and your mental ability as well. And so you drive to the point where you know if something happens, I've got time to think. Do I brake? Do I just ease off the throttle? Do I steer around it? And you give yourself time to make those decisions. And that way, by planning things so much better, you will avoid the embarrassment of reversing onto a roundabout, or you'll avoid the embarrassment of hitting the car in front, or even the car coming towards you. I've sort of had cars come towards me, and they're on my side of the road. They've come around the corner, slid out on the corner, and they're now on my side of the road. And by just thinking, well, if I brake, I'll just slide straight into them head on. If I steer to the other side of the road, they'll go down that side of me, and they'll miss me. And I've done that before, and just allowed the car to not touch the brakes, just ease off on the throttle, and work with the car, with the grip you've got to get across. Sometimes you've got ruts in the road, so getting across those is the most treacherous bit, because if the wheels don't want to go either front, you'll go straight on, or if the back don't want to go, it'll spin you sideways. So you have to be prepared for the car doing something that you're not expecting, and steer into the slide, or work with it to get over those rods and get on the other side of the road, and let the car that's out of control go down the near side of you rather than hit you. But it's all about that initial first instinct, because if your initial first instinct is to brake, you'll hit them. You'll lock the wheels, or the ABS will kick in, and you get very little braking when the ABS is in. That's why switchable ABS is so good, because actually in snowy conditions you will stop quicker, actually locked up, than your ABS will stop you. But that should be your last resort almost. Steering around the problem is probably a better result. But unfortunately, because we get so little snow, we get so little chance to hone skills, and the driving test does nothing to hone the skills at all. It would be a good idea to get people on a skid pan and just teach them car control. There's none of that in this country at all. sideways. It does teach you good car control, and most drivers in this country, the UK, haven't got a clue because we don't get enough snow. So the 1-2 times a year that we do get it, the country comes to a standstill. I was speaking to a lady the other day. She saw a bit of snow in the morning. She said, I tried to get my car out, tried to go down the road. I did 100 yards and thought, I can't get. And I'm thinking, it wasn't that bad. There was like an inch of snow. It's like an inch of snow stopped you going to work. And that is the case for most people. Which is quite handy in that it keeps the roads free for those that can drive in the snow. But you still get the odd bad driver out, and then they cause mayhem. So yeah, those are my thoughts on driving in the snow. If you can develop the skill and do it, then it's great. I remember many years ago driving Arctics, and I drove over Woodhead Pass for 8 years solid every winter. You get more snow up there than the average. Never once did I get stuck. Sometimes you make the wise decision that it's better to turn around and go round and via another route, but not very often. Quite often I would just proceed with caution. We were fully loaded 44-ton Arctic, and then I spent when we had the bad winter in 2010, I spent a month going up to the northeast, and for a whole week, every night there was fresh snow up there. Once you got the Scotch Corner and beyond, fresh snow, and coming back in the morning, it was like a skating rink. But I did that, full week doing that, and then obviously for the rest of the month, the snow hung around, and there was odd flurries of fresh snow. But never once got stuck. I had the trailer sink on me at one of the drops, so there's about 5-6 inches of snow, and during the course of unloading, the trailer sank, and it took me about 45 minutes to get out, just rocking it gently backwards and forwards, just keep rocking, and just each time just getting a bit more movement. But again, that's the skill of, you go backwards, and as it rocks forward, you select your gear and then keep the momentum going forward, and then when it stops going forward, you sort of drop out of forward gears, and as it starts to roll back, select reverse gear and go back. Now, with an automatic gearbox on a truck, that is a painful operation, but you've got to, if you've got manual, it's far easier, but you've got to work with the momentum, and that's where people go wrong. They sort of almost let the vehicle stop and then try going forward. No, go, if you've stopped, try and go backwards a little bit and give yourself a little bit of space to gain a bit of momentum. And if you can gain a bit of momentum, you can keep the momentum going as far as you can. Once it starts wheel spinning, stop, go back again, and keep the grip, because if you start polishing it up to ice, you are going to just get yourself stuck, and you'll never get out. Well, not without getting out and digging. I've never yet resorted to getting out and digging. I've always managed to get myself out and just not polish up the road surface, just use the momentum you can get and rock the vehicle backwards and forwards in the distance you can, and you'll get out. Even trying to drag an Arctic round at jackknife almost to turn around, that is hard work on the tractor unit, because you're trying to scrub the tyres around on the trailer, and if the snow is reasonably deep, obviously it's scrubbing a weight of snow around as well. But you get as far as you can, and then go back a bit on the bit that you've cleared, and then come forward again, and just try and get it a bit more each time. I've quite often used a lay-by on Woodhead to do that, turn round, and the trailer will stop you eventually. You can't pull a Arctic fully round 180 degrees without the trailer stopping you in deep snow. But it's then just use momentum and don't wheel spin. If you can get away without wheel spinning, you won't polish up the snow into ice, and you won't lose the grip that you've got. You ain't got a lot of grip, but you have got some. Second you polish it up to ice, then you're in trouble. So I hope that helps, and you know, like I say, it is a skill. It'd be interesting to hear your comments on driving in snow. Like I said to you, in the UK we don't get snow really sufficient for people to go to the trouble of changing tyres and putting proper winter tyres on, and that's where the problem starts, is that the tyres are just not made for driving snow and ice. If we went for winter tyres, I think those that have done that in the past have found there's a big difference between a winter tyre and a summer tyre when you're driving on snow. And you know, like I said, I personally, you know, got the option to take a 4x4, but you don't have to. You just have to learn how to drive, and you have to learn how to drive in snow, because it's completely different to driving on a tarmac surface, even if it's covered in rain. There's far more grip. You're probably looking at easily, if it takes you 10 times the amount of stopping distance, well, it's probably 10 times the amount of grip on a wet surface as to a snowy and icy surface. So that's my thoughts on it. And like I say, I've managed to drive 40 years nearly, 37 years without getting stuck. So I haven't done too bad. And when I first started driving, we used to have far worse winters than we do now. So I remember the winter of '86, driving in areas in an old Land Rover where the drifts were 18 feet deep. And in one night the frost was so hard, you could drive out of a country lane that had got a little bit of tree cover into where it went into open fields, and you just drove straight up on top of the drifts. And I didn't stay up there long because I was worried that the ice might crack and I'd lose my Land Rover into an 18-foot drift. But it was certainly a lot harsher than we've seen since. Up here, 2010 was the bad winter, and again I had a Range Rover. The company I worked for, they didn't send their trucks out in the daytime on the Wednesday, so I did a afternoon shift. So I got back late Tuesday night with an Arctic, and Wednesday night I went out again. They'd stopped the daytime run because the snow was so bad from the Tuesday night, and the roads around here were block solid for quite some time. There was Arctics just stuck everywhere. I trying to get to work. Fortunately, from the depot you're straight out onto the A1, so that was all right. But trying to get from here to work actually took quite a long time, because I had to go around all the back routes down country lanes to get there, because the main roads are still stuck with Arctics. So that's my thoughts on snow and driving, and like I say, it's not like I'm without experience. So hope you've enjoyed that, and we'll do another one soon.